We're going to turn to this other document. This is a document that Antifa literally published like today. You can see 6/11/25. And this is a report back. If you don't know what a groiper is, don't worry about it. Groipers are Nick Fuentes fans. If you don't know what that is, don't worry about it, okay? This is a document that Antifa just published today, is like an after action of what happened in Austin. So basically, this is Antifa communicating back saying, guys, here was what we did in Austin. Here's what that means for all you other groups around the country. So let's hear what they had to say. Oh, need my handy dandy reader again. Come on. Not going to read this whole thing myself. There it goes.
Melt ICE be water. Report back from a hot summer demonstration in Austin, Texas. The wave of resistance to federal raids that erupted in Minneapolis and spread to Los Angeles is generating shockwaves of revolt all around the country. As Donald Trump concentrates National Guard Marines in Los Angeles in an effort to terrorize those who are bravely standing up for their communities. The best form of solidarity is to extend the battle line.
Do you guys like the language that they use? As Donald Trump concentrates National Guard and Marines in Los Angeles in an effort to terrorize those who are bravely standing up for their communities. You can see the oppressor versus oppressed narrative, right? Donald Trump, the evil oppressor, bringing in the military to oppress the communities. And then these brave warriors that are just standing up for their people, but they really do believe this.
The best form of solidarity is to extend the battle lines far and wide, overstretching the mercenaries who serve him. In the following account, participants in a demonstration in Austin, Texas on June 9th described how they escaped the control of party organizers who sought to limit the potential of the protest, then evaded police for 2 hours, escalating the pressure on those who seek to subdue us.
I know exactly what they're talking about here. Do you guys want to know what's funny? They're talking about the Party for Socialism and Liberation. I know they're talking about the Party for Socialism and Liberation because I've seen them kind of shit talk them elsewhere. In the following account, participants in a demonstration, I'm pretty sure they are anyway, in the participants in a demonstration in Austin, Texas on June 9th, describe how they escaped the control of party organizers, I'm pretty sure that's the Party for Socialism and Liberation, who sought to limit the potential of the protest, and then evaded the police for 2 hours, escalating the pressure on those who seek to subdue us. What they're saying is the organizers of the protest didn't want us to be violent in our methods. The organizers of the protest were trying to corral us and make us be peaceful protesters, but we escaped the control of the party organizers. This is, again, another example of how Antifa is different than the Party for Socialism and Liberation. I know that the PSL is getting a lot of press. The PSL is generally nonviolent, though. Don't get it twisted. They will get violent if they have to. They will do graffiti. They will be destructive. But generally speaking, the Party for Socialism and Liberation is nonviolent, and they don't want those types of optics. Antifa's like, fuck you guys. We want to be violent. We're going to escape control of the oppressive party.
Melt ICE be water. On the evening of Monday, June 9th, over 600 protesters gathered at the Texas Capitol for a march announced by the Party for Socialism and Liberation.
I mean, can I get some Carlin was right in the chat? I didn't read this before I showed it to you guys. I told you, Antifa doesn't like the Party for Socialism and Liberation. They've been shit-talking them in their documents. I want to see some Carlin was right in the chats, please. Thank you. Thank you, Liquid Marble. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. You guys will get used to that, by the way.
On the evening of Monday, June 9th, over 600 protesters gathered at the Texas Capitol for a march announced by the Party for Socialism and Liberation. A revolutionary organization called for a parallel demonstration with a start time set an hour and a half later in front of the J.J. Pickle Federal Building, a U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement facility 4 blocks from the Capitol. The PSL rally began marching, tailed by a police motorcycle escort, and reached the IC facility by 7:45 p.m. The group was energetic and angry. A huge crowd chanted outside the building. Drummers beat a rhythm to the sound of breaking windows. Some people dragged scooters into the street. Others painted pro-immigration and anti-IC slogans or threw balloons filled with paint.
Okay, so anytime you guys are seeing graffiti, like the fuck ICE graffiti or the kill cops graffiti, that's almost always Antifa. I also want people to notice they had drummers. The drummers are, it's funny. I almost think that they're communicating with each other using the drums. I don't know exactly how it works yet, but they're saying the drummers beat a rhythm to the sound of breaking windows. Kind of sounds like those two things are combined. If you hear drummers, maybe you might hear breaking windows.
Some people dragged scooters into the street. Others painted pro-immigration and anti-IC slogans or threw balloons filled with paint. All the while, red shirt organizers from PSL were urging the crowd to keep moving. Dozens of people pushed back, chanting, "ICE is right here." Nonetheless, by 8 p.m., the PSL organizers had mobilized most of the crowd back towards the Capitol, successfully convincing some participants to tell others that moving would keep the group safe.
So they're shit talking the PSL. They're like, the PSL is not our friends. They're not letting us be violent and break windows and stuff like that. Hey Andre, you're right. Texas is deploying National Guard. Guys, don't think for 1 second that this can't happen in red states. By the way, I know we're going to be talking about a lot of blue states and blue cities over the coming weeks, and there's going to be a lot of violence in those places. But don't for 1 second believe that this cannot happen in red states. It will happen in red states. It's happening in Texas right now. Watch the Andrew Wilson clip. He seemed to like you since you complimented his debate style. But after the clip, he talked about the fun. Oh, hey, listen, man. Okay, I never debate people. I literally never debate people. I don't think debates are a good idea. I would absolutely debate Andrew Wilson on this. I would 100,000,000,000,000,000% debate Andrew Wilson on this. So someone can go deliver that message over to the Crucible. If Andrew Wilson wants to talk about the far left, I will debate Andrew Wilson on the far left. If Andrew Wilson wants to talk about funding sources for the far left, I will run circles around his ass with primary source receipts. I am not one of those stupid porn stars and OnlyFans girls, rather, strike that, reverse it. I am not one of those stupid women that Andrew Wilson debates on the Whatever podcast. If he wants to debate me on the far left, I will do that every day of the week. And listen, I'm actually on a pro Andrew Wilson kick right now. I actually kind of like Andrew Wilson. Don't tell anyone I fucking am starting to like Andrew Wilson, okay? I really don't want to. I really don't want to like Andrew Wilson, and it's really sad and it's really awful, and I don't want to, but I do kind of like Andrew Wilson. So I'm actually not shit talking him. I think that would be an interesting exercise to debate him on the far left, because I do actually respect him as a debater. I think he actually does a really good job. So someone can go tell him. I don't know. Maybe is that how the internet works these days? You guys can go and deliver the message. Okay, let's continue.
Nonetheless, by 8 p.m., the PSL organizers had mobilized most of the crowd back towards the Capitol, successfully convincing some participants to tell others that moving would keep the group safe. A splinter group of about 100 stayed behind and continued to express their feelings with art and music. The march was effectively split between those who were acting on their own initiative and those who were submitting to the authority of the PSL. The march surrounds the JJ Pickle Federal.
Wait. Oh, here's pictures from the march. So you can kind of see what they look like. Guys, if you see people in masks like this, they're almost always Antifa. By the way, people think that Antifa only dresses in black. Antifa specifically dresses like normies for a lot of this protest because they don't want people to be able to identify them as like Antifa instead of normies. So look at this though. They're trying to paint the Party for Socialism and Liberation as the oppressors. This is so funny. This is we're gonna see a whole factional warfare on the left between Antifa and the Party for Socialism and Liberation. The march was effectively split between those who were acting on their own initiative, Antifa, and those who were submitting to the authority of the evil, oppressive Party for Socialism and Liberation.
PSL shepherded the larger group back towards the Capitol building to an intersection with nothing but high fences, mounted cops, and streets blockaded by police. PSL organizers got on a microphone to formally disband the march. They thanked everybody for coming and encouraged them to go home and rest up to do it all again later. The crowd grew uncertain, largely returning to the sidewalk in front of the fenced-off Capitol and very nearly ceding the street to the police, except for a few insistent spirits who remained in the intersection.
Hang on, we got a super chat coming in from Scabs. Former leftist, by the way. An hour behind because I was listening to Broken Crown. Would love to hear a discussion between Aiden. I don't know about that one. I don't have anything against her, a certified social scientist and the queen fascist bitch. I don't know, man. I interacted with her a little bit in 2020, I think. I don't really remember that much about her. If she wants to reach out to me to talk to me, she's more than welcome to do so. But thank you for the super chat. I really do appreciate it.
The crowd grew uncertain, largely returning to the sidewalk in front of the fenced-off Capitol and very nearly ceding the street to the police, except for a few insistent spirits who remained in the intersection, dancing with banners. Troopers blared their sirens on both sides and commanded them to get onto the sidewalk, but the dancers stayed, leading chants of China.
I love it. They're like you can picture how Antifa is imagining this in their head. They're like, the evil PSL tried to make us get back on the sidewalk with their bullhorns. They're trying to paint the PSL like they're the police. It's so funny. Average person, can we say for certain PSL is Stalinist, or is that still speculation? No, the PSL is 100% Stalinist. Yeah, they're very Stalinist. So guys, one of the issues on the left is, okay, among revolutionary groups on the left, you have Marxist-Leninists. Antifa is probably going to be Marxist-Leninist. Revolutionary Communists of America are Marxist-Leninists. Most queer Marxists are Marxist-Leninists. And then you have Stalinists. And Marxist-Leninists do not like Stalinists at all. And this might sound weird, right? You're like, they're all communists. Why wouldn't they like each other? Well, Marxist-Leninists believe that Stalin ruined everything. They think that real socialism has never been tried because Stalin failed. And so you've got the Party for Socialism and Liberation that is Stalinist and also has roots in Mao because Mao is in the tradition of Stalin. And then you've got these other leftist organizations that are Marxist-Leninists that overtly denounce Stalin and they don't like him and they don't like other Stalinist organizations. So one of the things that we're seeing here is that Antifa, at least these people, are Marxist-Leninists, the PSL are Stalinists, and so they go like this. They don't like each other. People think the left always agrees. The left does not always agree. Appreciate the super chat.
Troopers blared their sirens on both.
Trotskyists, hang on, this is related. Are Trotskyists a separate group? Typically, Marxist-Leninists believe that Trotsky was the rightful inheritor. So typically, Trotsky would be grouped in with the Marxist-Leninists. But it's also like they kind of don't know because Trotsky didn't really get his chance and then he got assassinated and all that stuff.
Troopers blared their sirens on both sides and commanded them to get onto the sidewalk, but the dancers stayed, leading chants of China la migra, Tinga la migra. Meanwhile, at the Pickle IC facility, police tear gassed the remaining revelers and tackled some of them to the ground, pushing the crowd away from the building. Unaware of this, the cheerleaders at the Capitol continued to dance, especially when the walk signal was on, inspiring some of the crowd to flood out across the street.
They had a dance
The
party.
crowd remobilized in waves. This first wave took a sidewalk route back to the Pickle, where it collided with the smaller splinter group that had just been gassed. Together, they created a barrier of scooters across the street behind them and began to square off with the police in front of them.
Okay, they created a barrier of scooters across the street behind them and began to square off with the police in front of them. Here you can see. So one of the things they do in these cities is they go and they get these scooters that like you can rent out on the sidewalk. They use the scooters as weapons. So in Los Angeles, we saw they were getting these scooters and throwing them off the freeway overpass at the cops. In Seattle yesterday, footage came out of Antifa was getting all the bikes off of these bike racks and then putting them all in a giant pile and zip tying them together. I thought they were trying to create a barrier of some sort or like a fence or something, but apparently they were trying to light them on fire. And the reason they were trying to light them on fire is they wanted to create an explosion outside of the police station and use the batteries of the bikes to do it. So this is part of what they do. They look for things in the streets that they can use as weapons, that they can use as barriers and all that stuff, and then they use it in that way.
Together, they created a barrier of scooters across the street behind them and began to square off with the police in front of them. Protesters stand behind a line of electric scooters dragged into the streets to defend against police
Oh, that's a
incursions. Back at the
caption.
Capitol, a chant of "Whose streets?" Our streets brought the hundreds still on the sidewalk back into the intersection and returning south on Congress Avenue. Almost immediately, two motorcycle cops confronted the crowd. People hesitated but pushed on. The chopper cops tried to discourage them by blaring their sirens and driving forward. One motorcycle drove into the crowd at high speed, forcing protesters to jump aside. There were immediate consequences for his aggression. A crowd surrounded his vehicle and forced him off of it into the ground.
Hang on, hang on.
Meanwhile,
This is a common question. How many pallets of bricks have you actually seen? I'm not talking about past years. I'm not talking about 2020. I'm talking about right now. Because I haven't seen any pallets of bricks. And I've looked. I've seen a suspicious pile of rocks in an alleyway. Maybe someone dropped that off. Maybe Antifa stole it. I've seen Antifa taking a hammer and beating some concrete blocks on a sidewalk in order to be able to create rocks to throw at people. I don't think you did. I don't think you did. Where did you see them? Guys, I see this all the time from conservatives where you guys say you've seen things that you haven't seen and that I know you haven't seen because I pay attention to everything. Okay? I do not believe currently there is a significant number of these pallets of bricks being dropped off because I watch all the on the ground footage I can and I haven't seen them. Maybe there are. Maybe you guys know something I don't. You guys can send me those links, send them to me in my DMs on Twitter, send them to me in my DMs on Substack. The cinder blocks were put there by Home Depot to block the gates to block access to their loading docks. See, this is what I knew. I fucking knew it was something like this. I knew it was something like this. So Home Depot put the cinder blocks there to block access to a loading dock. It wasn't a grand conspiracy, guys. So I appreciate that there's a lot of misinformation out there. This is why we do this. Listen, if Antifa is actually doing the cinder block thing, they're going to write about it. If Antifa is actually doing the brick thing, they are writing on the internet about the violent things they want to do. They're not unclear about the violent things they want to do. If they're doing it, they will take credit for it. There's all sorts of shit on this website about violent, illegal things that they do. If they are doing it, they will tell us they're doing it. But until then, I'm going to assume that either it's not really happening, it's bullshit propaganda, it's another mistake, or it's like a coincidence, like Home Depot or something did it. Maybe someone stole something from a construction site. That does happen. But I promise you, if they're doing it, they're going to take credit for it, and we'll find that when we look in the documents.
meanwhile, the news arrived that the small group at the Pickle Building had been gassed and dispersed with a few arrests made. Although this caused a moment of hesitation, when the crowd rounded 8th Street and came upon the barrier line of lime scooters, people became jubilant. A state trooper Pepper sprays a protester after a confrontation in response to officers driving their motorcycles into the crowd. Faced with a line of police blocking access to the building, The mostly reassembled crowd turned around. When they reached Congress Avenue again, moving west, there was a line of cruisers directly ahead and a line of bike cops to the left. Immediately, the crowd found a gap in the bike line on the sidewalk and flooded through it.
Hang on. Sometimes I see questions in the chat and I just want to answer them when they come up. Have you seen any Satanism on either side? What do these people consider their religion? Okay. I've never seen Satanism. What I have seen. Do you guys want to see what an abortion shrine looks like? Should we take a break from Antifa documents to see what an abortion shrine looks like? Press 1 in the chat if you want to see what an abortion shrine looks like. Press 2 in the chat if you just want to keep going. Let me know. So, in general, what leftists believe about religion, leftists are not as anti-religion as you seem to think, as people think they are. Leftists generally believe that religion will disappear when capitalism disappears. I've never seen overt Satanism on the left. I have seen an abortion shrine, though. And I'm going to show you the abortion shrine because I'm seeing a lot of ones in the chat. Okay, give me 1 second, please. I'm going to pull up a document. Hang on. Let's get these on my screen. Okay. We're going to go back into the archives, and I'm going to take you back to the first ever undercover thing that I did. And the first ever undercover thing that I did was at a socialist reproductive justice conference. I went to a whole conference and spent a whole day with the Shout Your Abortion people. And the craziest thing that I saw on the day that I went to the abortion conference was I went on a tour of how to have a self-managed abortion, where they taught me how to take the abortion pill, and they walked me through all the steps in taking the abortion pill. And this was my tour guide, and her t-shirt had the abortion pill on it. This was at Hampshire College in Massachusetts, by the way. If people want to follow along with the pictures, I'll put this link in the chat. This was in April of 2023. And there were many steps to the abortion tour. First, you had to go to the living room. And in the living room on the abortion tour, they basically talked about a bunch of reasons why you might want to have an at-home self-abortion. Dragon Ball says, I don't understand why conservatives are obsessed with figuring out who's funding this. It doesn't matter. If all the funding was discovered and stopped, leftists would still be marching and wreaking havoc. Yeah, that's actually 100% correct. I think a lot of the, listen, it's not a bad idea to know where the funding is coming from, but generally speaking, I think where the funding is coming from is not actually the most important thing. The most important thing is, what are they actually doing? Okay. Yeah, Hong Kong is pro-capitalist. I'm going to say that. Dragon Balls is in Hong Kong too, so he would agree. So this is the living room in the abortion tour where they teach you all the reasons why you're supposed to have an abortion. And then they take you into the kitchen. This is the kitchen on the abortion tour. And in the kitchen, they teach you how to have a nice cup of tea while you're having your self-managed at-home abortion. And they talk about, here are all the things you're going to need for your self-managed abortion. You're going to need sweatpants and tea and a heating pad. And maybe a friend can make you a gift basket with all of these things in it to give you a gift when you have your abortion. This is the bedroom where you will lay down while you are waiting for your abortion pills to take effect. Yeah, Rich, I'm sorry, bro. I think you're just making this up because I can look at the pictures from their protests and know they don't have $200 backpacks. I can look at the pictures directly. So please refrain from that, bro. You're making stuff up. We don't do that here. Socialism is their religion. It is a cult. I definitely agree with that. This is the increase in well, these are the people who have self-managed abortions. So you can see it's mostly for Black and Latino people. This is the bathroom where after you take your abortion pills, you go and you sit on the toilet and you bleed your child out into the toilet. And I'm told in the abortion tour, there is a lot of blood and occasionally a body part that will bleed out into the toilet. And that's why when you get a self-managed abortion, you are supposed to have an abortion doula. An abortion doula is a woman that comes and she sits on a stool next to the toilet and she holds your hand as you bleed your child into the toilet, and she might make you tea as well. And I swear to God, this is all real. And they're doing this tour with a completely straight face. And then once you have aborted your own child and it has bled into the toilet, you go and you worship at the abortion shrine. The last stop on the tour is actually a real abortion shrine. And some people asked me at the time when I did this, they were like, Carlin, are they worshiping for the soul of the child that they just aborted and bled into the toilet? And I said, no, they're not. They're not. This is what's on the abortion shrine and all sorts of mystical things. And there's a fertility goddess on the abortion shrine. This is a fertility goddess, which is ironic. But if I go to another picture, this is a close up of one of the things on the abortion shrine. This is in another article that I had. On this element right here, what it says is loving yourself is the greatest revolution. You can see there's text on the outside of this. This is a self-worship abortion shrine. And so have I seen like Satanism at these things? No. But I was pretty sick to my stomach at the end of this self-managed abortion tour, and I'm actually pro-choice. I'm pro-choice with like limits, like 3 months with some exceptions. This abortion tour is the closest thing that I've ever come to becoming pro-life in my life, because I'm like, you're literally worshiping at a shrine to worship yourself after you bleed your child into the toilet. That's just great. Abortion is a means to liberate women from family. That is 100% true. 100%. Well, it's not satanic in that it's not satanic, but it is what it is. Anyway, that's probably the closest I've ever gotten to Satanism. Thank you guys for allowing me to take a little bit of break from Antifa. I hope you guys enjoyed the adventure into the land of self-managed abortions. We'll talk about reproductive justice another day on the channel. Reproductive justice is a trip. Reproductive justice is a whole other set of leftist activism that is batshit insane. Anyway, let's get back to Antifa. We've still got work to do.
Immediately, the crowd found a gap in the
Right
bike line on the sidewalk and flooded through it, embodying the watchword of the Hong Kong uprising of 2019. Be water. Though many were too young to have heard this saying in the George Floyd rebellion of 2020. The crowd quickly realized what a victory this evasive maneuver was. Suddenly, there were no flashing lights to be seen. They had broken out of the police cordon. For the next few hours, they were able to move freely through downtown Austin. China la migra resounded throughout the downtown streets. Rambunctious and playful activity escalated, each gesture building upon the last. Everything that wasn't nailed down was moved into the street. Orange barrels, scooters, event signs. The muses sang to painters from banks and venture capital firms. Some downtown businesses lost windows. Some parked Lexuses lost the wind in their sails. The crowd proceeded south down Congress,
Wait.
reaching the
That's actually hilarious. Listen to how Antifa writes. Some downtown businesses lost windows because Antifa hit the windows with a hammer. Some parked Lexuses lost the wind in their sails because Antifa took a knife and stuck it into their tires. Like, they're talking about the destruction of private property here. They're talking about the bourgeois property of the rich people.
The crowd proceeded south down Congress, reaching the Congress Bridge and starting across it. At this point, the front of the march was far ahead of rest of the march. People were uncertain about crossing the bridge out of downtown. Some started moving onto the sidewalk. There was a moment of hesitation before the crowd doubled back, heading back to familiar targets like City Hall, the Capitol, and downtown in general. Then they moved west on MLK along the river, stopping at City Hall to hang the Mexican flag over the balcony before traveling north 10 long Texas blocks all the way back to the Capitol. Fortunately, there, they encountered the remains of the group that had originally remained at the J.J. Pickle building until they were tear-gassed and dispersed. There were chants of L.A. lead the way, bolstered back up to 200 or 300 people, The crowd finally returned to the pickle building. More windows were broken. Some trucks showed up, and the drivers did burnouts while blasting electrifying music. People emptied water from construction barricades, flooding the street. Everyone loved it. Raucousness, dance party, good cheer. Protesters overturned construction barricades, emptying them and filling the street with water. The
Oh, that's
crowd
nice.
continued on down to 6th Street, the main drag for nightlife. A scooter shattered the custom neon sign of the mothership, Joe Rogan's Comedy Bar.
They destroyed the sign of Joe Rogan's bar? Someone go tell Joe Rogan that Antifa has claimed responsibility for destroying the neon sign at Joe Rogan's Comedy Bar. Poor Joe Rogan, he'll have to buy a new sign.
A scooter shattered the custom neon sign of the mothership, Joe Rogan's Comedy Bar. Though the venue appeared closed with its shutter rolled down, it was later learned from Reddit that there was a show going on inside. After this point, the crowd struggled to decide on a route, which slowed it down. This indecisiveness led the crowd to fall back on habit rather than strategy. Memory carried it against its better interests back towards the Capitol and the police. After not seeing a single cop for nearly 2 hours, the crowd began to encounter motorcycle units at intersections again. Rather than pushing through these units as people had done at first, which the crowd easily could have done again, the crowd allowed the police to determine their route. This went on for at least 20 minutes. That was a fatal mistake. The crowd was permitting the police to guide them into an ambush. People could have moved farther away and dispersed with no arrests, but instead, they walked directly into a trap. After marching back up 6th Street, the crowd continued west past Congress, the street leading to the Capitol building. Within a few blocks, a line of state troopers on motorcycles confronted the march, blocking the way forward. Once again, indecisive, the crowd began to split up into different groups, one going north, one south, before consolidating into a single mass heading south. They barely got halfway.
I just want to point something out. Every part of this action is meticulously documented. Every part of what happened, the strategy behind it, why they did what they did, how they did it, they write all this stuff down immediately. They send it out to CrimeThink. The reason that this is on CrimeThink's website is the purpose of this is to communicate this out to other Antifa groups all over the country so that they can learn from what they did in Austin. Antifa learns from each other, guys. All the documents on this website, they're published with the intent of communicating with this decentralized network of cells all over the country so they can learn from each other. I just want to point out, insane people don't do this. Mentally ill people don't do this. People who have a personality disorder don't do this. This is highly strategic. This is highly coordinated. They do this because this is how they're going to get their new world, okay? Or that's what they believe. And so they take the time to do highly detailed after action reports, learning from what they did so they can do it better next time. And I'll tell you this too, the right doesn't do this. The right does not communicate with each other in the same way. The left is a collective. They operate like a collective. They believe that they are responsible for everyone else. And so this is one of the reasons why saying they're mentally ill is not even accurate, because insane people don't operate like this. They just don't. Thank you, Suzanne. I appreciate you.
They barely got halfway down the block before 2 unmarked white vans in the intersection ahead unloaded squads of APD riot cops armed with pepperball guns. Aware that they were in danger of being cornered, the crowd turned down an alley. Those running ahead quickly turned back as a side-by-side full of more APD riot cops blocked the intersection. The APD cops dismounted and chased people down the alley, grabbing people at random and shooting pepper balls at gas protesters and some of their own officers for good measure. This pincer move dispersed much of the crowd and led to a handful of arrests. Shortly after this, a part of the crowd regrouped in front of the downtown tower that hosts the offices of Indeed, the job search company. There, two LR-80 tanks confronted them on a busy street full of cars. The crowd targeted the operators of these tanks, pelting them with projectiles, while some of the trucks that had been following the protest prevented the tanks from moving further. This combination of tactics ultimately led to the tanks backing off. At this point, the remaining participants dispersed for the evening. Why did so much time pass during which the police were nowhere to be seen? First, the blockading genuinely interrupted their ability to pursue the march.
Yo.
This was something that the Austin police had.
So now they're saying, here are the things that we did that disrupted the operations of the police.
This was something that the Austin police had not experienced on this scale before. Second, they lacked the numbers to keep up with and corral the protest, and the combativeness of the crowd increased the costs they had to calculate for any engagement. And at the same time, while this crowd was marching, there was still a group surrounding and tagging the federal building and then clashing with cops. So their forces were split between that engagement, defending the Capitol, and chasing us.
Oh,
As a
hang on.
police officer described.
Hang on. Hey, Christopher, our new friend Christopher. This is more like a fandom fetish of antisocial behavior. Christopher, wait till we introduce you to the wonderful world of queer Marxism and how obsessed queer Marxists are with BDSM as a political statement, and how obsessed queer Marxists are with polyamory and non-traditional relationships, not because they're obsessed with sex, but because they use these things as a political statement to queer the nuclear family. You think we've hit fetish yet? Oh, Christopher, just wait. Oh yeah, Christopher, go back and watch the Fat Studies episode that we did last week. You are in for a wild ride, bro. Like I told you guys, for everyone here that's new to socialism, you guys ain't seen nothing yet. I will show you the craziest shit you've ever seen on the internet, and it's not even close. This was supposed to be Queer Marxism Month. We were going to be talking about queer Marxism all month in honor of Pride Month. But no, the riots had to destroy my plans. We can't talk about it anymore. We have to talk about this.
As a police officer described in response to the 2020 uprising, we can handle one 10,000 person protest, but 10 1,000 person protests throughout the city will overwhelm us. Perhaps the police were told to stand down, or not to create a confrontation in the neighborhood that the march passed through, or to focus on the Capitol and the federal building, but for now, we don't know. The march didn't experience significant confrontation with the police until we returned to the Capitol, after which they were only trying to keep up with a single crowd. After that point, when the crowd continued marching, the police were likely clearing the streets and coming up with plans to disperse the crowd, leading to the ambush at the end.
Hang on. We're getting a great question from Jared. Let's just look at this picture. This is the crowd in Austin, guys. I understand it's Austin. Austin is a weird part of Texas. It's very blue. But look at the crowd in Austin that they got to come out on a weekday. Jared, thank you for the good question. How does the right push back against something so decentralized with the amount of organizing they have, reinforce the state and its need to go outside the current bounds of the system to do so? Jared, for my money, what I always tell people is I think what people need to do is you guys need to go back to basics. This is what we do on my channel. We're going back to basics and we're learning as much as we can about the enemy. The biggest challenge that the right has right now is that the right does not understand the enemy they are fighting. The right has horrible influencers. Horrible. You guys have the worst influencers. They lie to you all the time. They tell you things that aren't true. They write books about things they just made up. When you compare it to what the real left does in the real world, it doesn't compare. When you look at the clickbait content on Twitter that gets viral and is shared by all the big names, if you look at the evidence in the real world, it doesn't align. It's not the same. And it took me a long time to figure this out, by the way. And so I don't want anyone to feel bad. But what I will tell you is People need to go back to basics. If you actually want to defeat the left, you have got to learn who the left is. You've got to learn what they believe. You've got to learn what they care about. You have to learn how they operate. The whole purpose of this exercise and what we do on my channel and in my community is we learn as much about the left as possible. I'm doing that because I want you guys to go into your communities, talk to your friends, talk to your family, and teach them everything you learn here. Use the resources I give you on the Substack, the videos that I create. Ask me for resources if you don't have it already. Use the resources I give you to go and teach other people. Because until the right understands the actual enemy, ain't nothing gonna work. Because right now, Anna Paulina Luna is introducing some sort of bill in Congress against Code Pink. Code Pink is one of the least worried about. Like, I'm not worried about Code Pink as an organization on the left. So the right is obsessed with doing things that are not actually addressing the real problem because they don't understand what the real problem is. And so we need to teach people what the real problem is so that people can put solutions in place that will actually impact the real problem. That is step number one. If people don't start learning who the real left actually is based on what they're doing in the real world, then there is no tactic that I can give you that will ever work. Which sucks, but this is where we are. Steve O'Devil, always educational. Alice in Queerland is so good and the ending inspiring. To the new folks, stick around. Oh, yeah. So Steve O is talking about. Okay, I'm going to do a shameless plug because you gave me the opportunity to do so. I just released a book this week. It's a dark satire based on Alice in Wonderland. You guys can support the work I'm doing by buying a copy of Alice in Queerland. If you like it, Steve-O, I'm looking for a review on Amazon from you. I don't have that review yet. This is a story about Alice getting up in the middle of her class in middle school and asking, what is a woman? And then she gets sent to DEI training to rid her of her gender identity. And it's basically a dark satire based on Alice in Wonderland. And so that's what Alice in Queerland is. I had a ton of fun writing this book. I hope people like it. It is available on Amazon in paperback and Kindle. It's not an audio yet, but I'll work on the audio. So thank you for the super chat, Steve-O. I have a bunch of other books too, guys. If you want to buy my other books, you can head over to redmenacepress.com. You can find my books there. I've got a couple books I'm working on later this year, doing deep dives into queer Marxism. But I had a ton of fun writing Alice in Queerland. I thought it was great. I had another super chat that came in. Let me see. Alex, have you showed our newbies the Dog Park Dissidents music video yet? Let's save that until the end. I'll do the Dog Park Dissidents at the end. How about that? Okay? We'll do Dog Park Dissidents at the end. All right, let's go back to our document. This is long. We're not going to be able to get to that video today, but that's all right.
A growing crowd occupies the street in front of the federal building. We'll conclude with some conclusions about the events of the evening and about what can come next. The main takeaway from the evening is that this moment is explosive. A minimum of physical preparation and a bit of boldness suffice to transform what would have been a predictable, toothless rally at the Capitol into the most powerful demonstration against the racist and authoritarian regime that Austin has seen since 2020. The crowd was more tactically equipped than usual, with several individuals having brought gloves, goggles, art supplies, and respirators. But the most important thing is that right now, people feel urgency. Also, it is important to plan for success. Demonstrators should arrive with an array of possible objectives in mind, in case they easily accomplish their initial goal. But once a march starts to repeat itself, doubling back on the same territory with diminishing returns, it may be time to conclude. In this case, the participants surprised themselves by getting past the police and opening up a new horizon of possibility. Yet after a while, they lost the ability to identify new targets and stay creative, instead becoming trapped in a loop circling the same few blocks of downtown. The crowd should either have dispersed earlier or identified a new target outside the territory they had repeatedly marched through. Once the crowd lost the ability to come up with new targets, move in new directions, or at least keep growing, It was only a matter of time before the police were able to regroup and launch an offensive.
See, what they're saying is you always have to have a purpose to what they're doing. This is such a strategic document. They're saying if you're going to be out causing trouble, then make sure you have a purpose with what you're doing. Because if you're just walking around aimlessly, like breaking things and doing things you shouldn't be, eventually the police are going to catch on and they're going to corral you. So you always have to have a purpose. You always have to have a goal. And if you don't have that, then go home.
Once the crowd lost the ability to come up with new targets, move in new directions, or at least keep growing, it was only a matter of time before the police were able to regroup and launch an offensive. Similarly, just as it is crucial to resist the efforts of self-appointed leaders to dictate what a demonstration can do, whenever possible, people should resist the efforts of police to determine their movements. When the crowd encountered a few chopper cops or a single cruiser in its way, some people would shout they're kettling us and turn around rather than charging through. In fact, this is what enabled the police to herd the crowd directly into a situation in which they almost were kettled. It is important to be aware of efforts to kettle a crowd.
Do you guys know what kettle means? Do they have an explainer? So, kettling, and they've got a link to a previous document they did about mass arrests. Kettling is what they've been doing in Los Angeles, where basically there's a curfew. And if you're out after curfew, the police are going to kettle you, which is basically the police form like a perimeter and they trap you in a giant circle, and then they arrest everyone in the circle. So they're explicitly explaining here, like, hey, if you end up getting arrested, try to make the best of it. By the way, they do train to get arrested, but they're trying to warn people, like, this is how you get trapped in these situations. Come on, play.
Kettle.
Oh, not that. Play the whole thing.
It is important to be aware of efforts to kettle a crowd, but often the best way to avoid this is to move through police lines where they are thin before they are reinforced. Finally, it can help to have material reinforcements ready for delivery well after a march gets underway. As the wave of resistance that started in Minneapolis and spread to Los Angeles unfolds into a nationwide revolt, we can anticipate more hot
Hang on.
demonstrations.
As a wave of resistance that started in Minneapolis, people don't know this. The start of this was not actually Los Angeles. The start of this, and they documented this on their website too, the start of this was people pushing back on ICE deportations in Minneapolis. Minneapolis was the spark that lit Los Angeles. Does everyone understand that? A couple people, Antifa, Minneapolis is extremely leftist, stood up to ICE deportations in Minneapolis. This got almost no media coverage, but Antifa knew about it and they communicated about it. And guess what? The people in Los Angeles copied the people in Minneapolis. Yup, the home of George Floyd. Exactly.
As the wave of resistance that started in Minneapolis and spread to Los Angeles unfolds into a nationwide revolt, we can anticipate more hot demonstrations to come. Now we know that people will turn out to combative mass demonstrations here, if they're invited to. Ahead of the next moment of possibility, there are a few things that crews could do now to prepare. The window of opportunity is
Hang
open
on.
right now.
It missed all the bullet points. Okay, what can crews do to prepare? I have to read these. Find a minute to rest, heal, get grounded, share food, reflect on your experiences so you can be ready to act with all the resources at your disposal when time comes. So they're telling people, don't rush in, bide your time, make sure you're taking care of yourself. Identify potential targets and what kind of actions they could render possible. These could be specific buildings, institutions, neighborhoods, commercial districts. Generate flyers to circulate and build popular consciousness around those targets. So they're telling people, make a hit list of the things that you want to go after. Decide as a crew what kinds of interventions you can make to help shift dynamics in the favor of the crowd. Anytime Antifa says the crowd, they mean them. Essentially, they mean the protesters or the rioters. Could you decisively propose a new target and direct the crowd to it? Do you have a mutual aid project that could distribute gas masks? Oh, people have been asking me about gas masks. Check this out. Mutual aid projects are how the left funds a lot of its protests. Mutual aid projects are just like nonprofits or organizations that open up where some leftists donate money to these organizations. Those organizations then take that money and they buy things like gas masks or goggles or umbrellas or other things that Antifa uses in the protests. So the gas masks that you guys saw getting handed out, I'll bet you money it was funded by a mutual aid project. Mutual aid projects tend not to be extremely well funded. This is not USAID. This is not Soros. This is not either of those things. This is a mutual aid project that is specific about raising money within the leftist community in order to buy stuff that they need to do this stuff. Does that make sense to everyone? Could you coordinate communications and outreach efforts to draw more people to the streets and reinforce the demonstrations? Can you mobilize simultaneous actions at multiple locations, especially locations in which nothing has happened before? Can you open up new spaces to reinforce and support frontliners? Can you help sustain the demonstrations with food, medic support, water, transport, and other material needs? So they're thinking through, here are all the things that we need to do to sustain these protests, to sustain these riots, to sustain this violent insurrection in the long term. Yeah, or you can just steal stuff from Target. That is absolutely an option, 100%. Down here, play.
The window of opportunity is open right now, and the possibilities are endless. It is up to all of us to bring those possibilities into existence before the forces that seek to preserve a world of police, borders, and exploitation can slam it shut.
Is that it? That's it. That is the end of the document. All right. So that is the Antifa document. That is the after action report for Austin, Texas. It just got posted on their website today. That is their perception of what happened in Texas, and that is what they want other groups all over the country to know.